Hey guys, welcome back. Today I want to talk to you tomato growers about something you should be thinking about right now. And that's saving your heirloom tomato seeds, specifically cherry tomatoes. So right now in the Northern Hemisphere, most of your guys' tomatoes are just going nuts. They're looking great, you're eating them every day. Well, right now is the perfect time to be taking those seeds. Now, I believe tomatoes are one of the most popular garden plants in North America because they're the easiest plants to save seed from. You know, tomatoes are self-pollinators in that you only need one plant to get viable seed from your fruit. Now, because of this, if you're growing heirloom varieties of tomatoes, your seeds will always come true. Now, what does that mean? That means when you grow those seeds the following year and you grow up that tomato plant and you go to harvest that fruit, you know exactly what it's going to look like because it's going to look like the parent plant that the seeds came from. So instead of going and buying the seeds every year for your tomato plants, why not save the seeds from your best plants, from the best varieties that grow the best in your garden? And not only that, it's easy and free. So having said that, let's go through the steps on how you save your tomato seeds, specifically cherry tomatoes. So to save your own tomato seeds, you only need 4 things, guys. Obviously, you need your tomatoes. You need a barbecue skewer. You need a deli cup to put the tomato seeds in. And you need some water. Now, if this was a larger variety, you'd simply take your tomato off the vine, cut it in half, and then scoop out the seeds into your bucket. Now with these cherry tomatoes, that gets pretty time consuming because I'm going to be doing hundreds of these. So the temptation is to simply grab your cherry tomato and then squeeze them into the bucket. And so while that works too, I do have a little trick for you. So let me show you what happens when you simply just grab your tomatoes and squish them. Okay, so not very fun, right? The tomatoes literally go flying everywhere. So here's the trick, and this is why you need the barbecue skewer. So you simply grab one of your ripe tomatoes, ripe tomato, poke a hole in it, and squish it around like that, and then squirt it into your bucket. So once you break that seal on that skin, the seeds all pour out in one direction and they don't explode. You're essentially relieving the pressure from the tomato fruit. Or you just poke the hole, squish it around. See how it already starts to cleave? See how it's already gone almost like I've cut it without actually cutting it? And then just squish it in the bucket. Now you're not getting tomato seeds in the eyes. It's not flying around and hitting you. Piece of cake. So I'm going to go ahead and do about 30 of these guys. And then we can go to the next step. Okay, so I've squished a bunch of tomato seeds in here. Here they are. All you got to do is add some water. Now regular tap water is just fine for this. So now you got to let this sit for about 2 weeks. Now, why do you have to do that? You have to let this ferment. Now, why would you want to let it ferment? Well, the answer is simple. What would a tomato fruit do in nature? That fruit, let's pick an old one, would fall down to the ground. It would sit there and it would start to rot with those tomato seeds inside. In other words, the inside guts of that tomato would start to ferment. And that's the conditions that the tomato seeds need to build that proper seed coat. So we're mimicking that in this bucket of water. So let's let these seeds sit for 2 weeks. We'll come back and we'll do the next step. All right, guys. So it's been 10 days. I rinsed these guys, I'd say 3 times to get the bulk of that pulp and other tomato fibers off of the seeds. Now the seeds have fermented nicely. You know, when you initially start, you have a lot of tomato material. So within a day or two, the water gets really funky really fast. Now towards the end, when all you're left with is seeds, the water stays quite clear. And that's when you know you're ready to strain the water and start drying these seeds out. So let's grab the strainer, head on inside, give these guys a final rinse, and I'll show you how I dry them. Okay guys, so I got my strainer here. Now it's a pretty fine micron strainer. As you can see, these sweetie seeds will probably be the smallest tomato seeds that you'll see. And you know, cherry tomatoes in general do have small seeds. So, you know, if you use a strainer with too big of holes, you run the risk of losing all your seeds down the drain. So make sure to get the right size strainer for the job. So rinsing these guys is super easy. Just have your water running. You know, dump out your seeds. Try and get any of the pulp by hand that hasn't just washed through. Take it down the drain. All right. Okay, so we got most of the pulp off. Let's get those really dry. Now let's take these to our drying station for the final stage. Okay, so it's been 10 days. Your seeds have fermented. You've got all the tomato pulp and all the tomato meat off of them. You've rinsed them clear one final time. You got them in the strainer right here, ready to go. Now I've got here laid out for you my 3 top choices for types of paper to dry out these tomato seeds. So we'll go from my least favorite to my most favorite. Starting on the right, you got newspaper. Newspaper's great, super absorbent. You know, it's free. There's an abundance of it. Nothing wrong with going with newspaper. The next step up, we have regular computer printer paper. Now this is great because there's no writing on it, so you can see all the seeds, especially the small seeds like sweetie. It's not quite as absorbent as the newspaper, but the seeds also stick less to it. So while your newspaper, you know, the seeds might be dry in 24 hours, this guy might take, you know, 36 to 48 hours, but there's less chance of those seeds sticking to it and less chance of you losing the seeds, you know, in the printing. Now, lastly, we've got my favorite. Now this here, this is the back of sticker paper. So, you know, if you go to Staples or Office Depot and you buy packs of mailing labels or stickers or whatever, and so once you're done with those, you're left with this waxy type of paper that is simply fantastic to dry out your tomato seeds. And so I use this exclusively right now. It's just the best. The tomato seeds just don't stick. Yeah, they probably take 2 days to dry instead of, you know, drying overnight like the newspaper. But it's totally worth it. You don't lose a single seed. It is so much easier to collect them once they're dry. So I'm just going to go ahead and dump my seeds on there. You want to get them all out. Now move away any pulp that you might see. And you don't want to leave the seeds as a blob in the middle. You want to spread them around so that 1, they don't stick to each other, and 2, they dry faster. So we'll let this guy sit for 2 days and we'll come back and revisit it. All right, guys, so it's been 2 days and you can see here that we have about 100 tomato seeds, all perfectly dried. Okay, so now we're ready for the final step, and that's simply where you're going to store your seeds. Now, there's numerous ways to store them. Now, a lot of people used to use paper envelopes, and that's because they were finding their seeds were germinating, you know, during the storing process. Now, the reason why that was happening is they weren't getting the seeds dry enough. So they were storing them, there was moisture, they would germinate. Whereas if they put them in the paper envelopes, well, the paper would absorb that excess moisture, and, you know, the seeds would be fine until the next season. So if you're confident that you've got your seeds dry enough, you can simply use a deli cup, or what I prefer is just a little plastic Ziploc bag. So I'm going to go ahead now, put these into the little Ziploc bag, and then label it. Just make a little boat. Oh, I only lost 2. That's not bad. You know, that sticker paper really makes it easy to let those tomato seeds slide off. You simply couldn't do that with the newspaper. You'd have to take them all off by hand. And so there you go. That's my sweeties, you know, for next year's production. All right, let's do a final rundown of what you're going to need to save your tomato seeds, specifically your cherry tomato seeds. First up, if you can remember, you're going to want to poke a hole in one side of the skin of that cherry tomato so that when you squeeze it, you know where all the seeds are going to shoot out. You don't want those seeds to go splattering everywhere. Because 1, if you got multiple varieties, now you've mixed up seeds, and 2, it's just a pain to clean up. Now, once you get all the seeds in your deli cup, you're going to want to fill it with some water, and you're going to want to ferment it for about 10 days. I usually rinse it 2 or 3 times to get the bulk of that tomato meat and pulp out of there. By about day 10, that water is crystal clear, and you're ready to strain those seeds. Now, make sure to use a small micron strainer, especially for these cherry tomato seeds. You don't want to be losing any down the drain. Now, you got to dry these tomato seeds from anywhere from 1 to 3 days, depending on the type of paper you use. The best paper to use is the back of sticker labels. It's phenomenal the way it works. If you can't get that, just use regular white computer paper. Lastly, once all those seeds are dry, just simply put them in a little plastic envelope or a deli cup, and you're good to go for next year. You don't got to buy your tomato seeds. Now, all tomatoes are self-pollinators, so if you're growing heirloom tomatoes like I am, you really do got to save your seed. There's no point in buying seeds. Once you figure out what grows best in your garden, just save those seeds every year and don't even think about buying tomato seeds. That's it for today, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this little tutorial on saving your own tomato seeds. Hopefully, if you weren't saving them before, you'd start now, especially if you're growing heirlooms. As always, leave any questions or comments down below. I'd love to hear about your tomato growing. You know, are you saving seeds? Do you do it the same way I do? Do you have any different methods? Just leave a comment down below so that the community can grow as good as your tomatoes. Click subscribe if you haven't already. For those of you that have, I really do appreciate the support. And I'll see you next time.